You probably realized that the same outbound playbooks that used to work before COVID or even before AI 3 years ago, they stopped working or they're not as effective as they were. What are some things that you've noticed that have changed in the past 3 years? One thing I know for sure is that even the most personalized messages are now getting ignored by buyers since AI has made it super easy to personalize at scale. As a buyer, if you're receiving, especially the higher up the ranks you are, the more difficult it is to know what was written by AI and what is an actual human on the other end of the line, what messages are just spray and spray and what are actually personalized to you and your business and what you care about. And so people just stop responding as is. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean that outbound doesn't work, that cold outreach stopped working. But the bar has to go up in order to get replies. Whereas 3-5 years ago, you could segment your customer lists into smaller batches and run highly customized outbound plays that get somewhere between 4 and 6% reply rates. That used to be good and acceptable for cold outreach. What are you experiencing? Whatever it is, by the end of today's session, you'll have an idea of what used to work, what has changed in the last 1 or 2 years, and what now has to change in outbound to continue getting replies like before AI took over. And we'll also show you exactly how we built our own accounts list for 2026 so we maximize our chances of building the pipeline that we need to hit our revenue targets. Okay, so hopefully everyone's seeing my screen currently, which has a quick workflow of what building accounts used to look like. And we'll open up this canvas gradually as we go through the presentation or go through today's session and see what needs to change moving forward. The old way was, well, we still needed to do a lot of upfront work to get results, but it was pretty straightforward and repeatable, easy to train sales reps on. We got started by either getting a list of accounts, or if we're in an early stage company and we had to build our own set of accounts, we would search for accounts based on who fits our ideal customer profile. We would start with firmographic information or even limit our search to firmographic information. This could be anything from account size. Maybe you could take into consideration the annual revenue of the company. Do they have a certain department or not? What is the department headcount size? What industries they're working in? Which locales or regions they have? Employees in, or even an office in. We would not stop there, but expand our search a bit and look for lookalike companies. Tools like Ocean.io made this super simple, and specifically, once we already have a set of customers who we know they're our best buyers, we wouldn't just want to limit our search to the same industry, same account size, but we would specifically want to target very similar companies to our best performing clients. So running a lookalike search was and has been a very low hanging fruit in the last years. We would then, because let's say we're a team of 5 to 10 sales reps. We can't just build this list, get maybe a couple thousand accounts and then just spray and pray. We can't even just contact every single one of these accounts, because some of them might not be within our territory. And the last thing we want is to tread on one of our colleagues' toes by double tapping their accounts. So we would have this sales obtainable market. We would filter based on the territory rules. Maybe I'm only responsible for UK and Ireland. Maybe it's Northern Europe. Maybe it's Central and Eastern Europe. But we would filter for who counts in our territory. We would then prioritize these accounts based on, well, if you wanted to maximize your chances of actually getting into an account and building pipeline, you would prioritize based on velocity factors. Like when I mention velocity factors, I'm specifically talking about sales velocity. So sales velocity is an equation of how big the potential deal size is, how many deals you can land within an account, how fast you can close it, and what is your likelihood of winning. These 4 factors go into calculating sales velocity. So you would, if you're selling a seat-based SaaS solution, you would look for the number of potential seats within an account. So whether it's a department or the total company size, if you can sell to everyone because you're selling an org-wide solution, you would look at seats. Some industries are more regulated than others, so you're depending on your certifications, your win rate might differ based on industry. The sales cycle length will differ based on which industry you're targeting, but it can also differ by region. Let's say if you're targeting DACH, sales cycles are likely going to be longer because in DACH, people are more averse to change, and so they'll do more due diligence before taking on a new vendor. Whereas maybe in the US, they make decisions fast, but if you don't deliver, they're just as fast as for churning. Once you prioritize this list of accounts, maybe you are now at a list of 200 or 500 accounts. You've prioritized them based on velocity, and you know who are the 20 or 50 accounts that you're going to target this specific quarter. You would still need to segment your approach. You're not just going to spray and pray all of these accounts because you know that there are better ways in to those accounts. So what would we do? We would segment our approach. Do we have first or second degree connections? And then what channels do we reach out on? Are we limited to emails? Can we also, apart from emails, can we also find their LinkedIn profiles and then do a multi-channel approach between emails and LinkedIn messages or connection requests or in mails? But even better, if we have phone numbers for specific markets, for specific contacts, then that's still going to be the fastest way of booking meetings. So you can then segment your approach based on, hey, can I ask for a warm intro? Can I go directly to a contact because I have a Rolodex within an industry, let's say? Or, and then segment my list based on which channels I can approach these buyers on, available data. And then I would have 2 approaches, right? I have the warm approach of reaching out warm to first and second degree connections. And then everything else is really cold outreach, where I still cannot afford to spray and pray and send the same message to every single contact. I would segment based on, 1, seniority. Are they above the line? Who director and above, so director, VP, head of, C-level, who care about more strategic and long-term goals versus below the line managers, senior reps, and in other individual contributors who care more about the day-to-day operational things. I will segment my outreach based on both persona and the specific pain points. So I can reach out to the same persona, let's say, and the same contact 3 or 4 times within a year with a different point of view around what challenges and pains they're experiencing. And this used to work when companies were focused on growth at all costs, and companies were more open to change. But since COVID, everyone started pulling back on spend. And then since AI made it easy to spam, it's now difficult to get people's attention just via cold outreach. And there are 3 main problems that Yanni and I identified. Of course, there are a lot of ways that these problems are experienced in the day-to-day when we're doing cold outreach, but there are 3. These all boil down to 3 main issues. Number 1 is only 5% or less than 5% of companies are in market at any given time. So if you have a list of 200 or 500 accounts and you're reaching out to these accounts one by one, what ends up happening is you might go through an entire quarter focusing on accounts who are either satisfied with the solution or not even aware that a problem exists. So they are not looking for any solutions, and so they won't respond at all, and you're left starting Q2 with a pipeline gap that you now need to make up for, and that's draining. Not only draining on you mentally, but now you have to make up for activity in the next quarter. The second thing is AI made personalization easy, so buyers are ignoring simple personalization. And the third thing is that we don't always think of, or not at first at least, but accurate contact data has become harder to find. What do I mean by accurate contact data? Because you can go up to your typical tools like ZoomInfo, Apollo, um, you name it, you got it, and you can get contact data. But are those valid phone numbers? Are they valid emails? Are the contacts who you're reaching out to there? Are they still working at the companies? A lot of times, because these are second order data or secondary data, which means that the company, the data provider doesn't directly or doesn't gather the data themselves. They purchase it or procure data from other sources. There's always going to be, or often there's going to be, a lag between the data that's available on these platforms versus what is um, what is actual data. And a lot of times, let's say you could be reaching out to contacts who have switched jobs 3 months ago already. And imagine all the research or outreach or all the effort that you put into reaching out to an account was in vain because the contact was not working there, the phone number was inaccurate, or the email bounced because the email syntax that has been used to put together that data was incorrect to begin with. And LinkedIn is still the single best option for B2B data on who works at a given company. And obviously they're protective of that data, and they've been tracking down companies who are either automating outreach or activities on LinkedIn or just scraping their data. We've seen that with a couple of companies now who now have had their company LinkedIn profiles deleted, removed, so that LinkedIn data cannot be extracted. And that means that a lot of other companies are now left with either fewer data or the data that they do have is now inaccurate. What can we do to overcome these? Well, the easiest thing that we can get started with is because data is still going to be harder to find. If we start with the companies who are in market, that's already a good place to start. So let's see what the new way is and how it differs from the old way. The new way is in the first few steps exactly the same as it used to be. We're still searching for our list of accounts and we're still using firmographic information. We're still going to enrich those, or not enrich, but augment that list with look-alike search to find the best companies, the companies who fit our best performing clients. And we're still going to filter for territory rules so we don't step on each other's toes. We are still going to prioritize based on velocity factors. So where can we get the most amount of business in the least amount of time? But then we have a change, which is we want to find out of these companies, even if we have the list of where we can get the biggest deals or sell the fastest, who is actually looking at our solution right now? Who might be open to a change in the upcoming 3 to 6 months? And then we can, once we have signals on who to target, we still might be wasting our time on a couple of accounts or a couple of contacts, but the likelihood that we will find someone who is open to hearing more about our solution will be higher. But we cannot just reach out with, again, the same type of message to every single person who shows up in an intent signal tool or a third-party signal tool. So we have to again segment our approach. But now we have a third option. We have, again, warm outreach. And you will just use the signals acquired to fine tune your point of view on how you're messaging your first degree connection, or how and why you're asking for an intro from a second degree connection. You will still have cold outreach, but cold outreach now has two types of categories. You can specifically call out what you've observed, what signals you've observed on the market when you're reaching out to those buyers or potential buyers, your prospects. And wherever you don't have connections or don't show up in a third-party signal tool, you would still be able to run highly segmented outreach based on persona and pain. Yes, this will have lower returns, and you should expect that, but you have now one more category to rely on for building your outreach. Now, does that mean that you can, procure a tool like Sixth Sense, Bombora, or something else, and or just look for, who's liking your post and who's fundraising right now, and then reach out to every single one of those people on the list? Not entirely, because not all signals are created equal. So in the next 3 to 5 minutes, let's look at some of the signals that sound good in the short term, but don't really get results, and which ones are much more indicative of what will get results for you in the short term. Whoever is in the chat or tuning in from LinkedIn Live, what type of signals are you currently using? And let's see if they're real intent signals or can be classified as real intent signals, or are they just scratching the surface? Who has some ideas on what signals are worth and are not worth looking out for? Well, for one, let's look at one. So what we'll see here is each row is similar in nature in both the surface level and the real intent columns, but we'll see why one is categorized as surface level and why one is real intent. So first of all, fundraising. Super easy. Fundraising data is super easy to acquire. A lot of tools now notify you if someone has either raised a new fundraising round recently, or you can look at alerts or follow founders on a specific startup list, and you'll get notified when they boast about a new series, whatever, funding round. But that just means that everyone who's trying to sell to those companies is going to send an email to that founder. So imagine a founder receiving 200 emails within a matter of 48 hours. Are you going to have a chance of reaching out? Probably not. Plus, if someone has raised funds recently, they raised those funds because they have a strategy for which they need the funds in the first place. So the strategy has already been set. If that is the point where you try to enter, unless you're part of the bigger picture that the founders have, your message is just going to be disregarded. Instead, job changes which can be tied to fundraising. Let's say you're raising funds to be able to hire an executive team to grow revenue within a company, or reduce churn, or scale operations. So job changes can sometimes be tied to fundraising, but especially if you've seen an executive level hire join a company, that's going to be a really good indicator that, hey, that executive now has to deliver some project, based on their capabilities, and that's why they joined the company. So something is going to change. Question, are you going to be part of that change? Are you a strategic priority for that executive who joined? So that is real intent. Second thing that usually comes up is post engagement. If someone comments on a post, or follows a competitor, or likes a post of your competitors, or your competitor, or your post even, you might think, oh, this person engaged with my post, they must be interested. And that's just not going to be the case. Sometimes I just see something that I'm interested in, and or I learn something from a post and I'll just like it, but that it's not intent. Also, Sales Navigator has two types of intent data. One that I don't regard as real intent signals, which is the buyer intent. Buyer intent basically shows you, if you have Sales Navigator Advanced license or above, Sales Navigator will show you if an account has category intent or buyer intent. Buyer intent is essentially, is someone aware that you exist, or you or your company exist? So are they following your company? Have they engaged with the post of your company? Have they visited your profile or engaged with a post of yours? That's buyer intent. Doesn't really give you a signal that is actionable. However, Sales Navigator's category intent tool is a different thing. Remember, Sales Navigator has first-party intent data or first-party data. Users who are taking actions and behaving in a certain way on their platform, they have that data. So if someone is searching actively for a tool, let's say it's a CRM or a database platform, LinkedIn will see what type of company profiles and products and people profiles you're engaging with, and they'll put together a picture of, hey, this person must be interested in this, so I'm going to show them ads for this and this. And remember, LinkedIn makes most of their revenue not from LinkedIn Sales Navigator licenses, not from recruiter licenses, or just LinkedIn business licenses. They're an ad platform now. LinkedIn is incentivized to track their user behavior so they can advertise better. Subsequently, they can serve some information back to us if we're paying for it in category intent data. So for me, that signals that yes, because LinkedIn has data, first-party data on what type of content someone is engaging with, that will give me some assurance that if someone pops up as a category intent, they might be interested in a product group that I set. And you can follow up to 10 product categories or category intent signals if you have LinkedIn Sales Navigator Advanced, an advanced subscription. What other intent signals are there? We collected 5 in total for each. If someone follows competitors, I probably receive 1 or 2 emails every single week where I'm following a company and someone just lazily sends an email, hey, I saw you following this competitor. We're a competitor, or we're following this company, and we're a competitor of theirs. Our solution is way better because we say so. Do you want to give it a try? No, I don't. Just because I follow a company does not mean that I'm in the market. Maybe I'm super satisfied with the solution, and it'll take me more effort to change than the benefits of making the change. Maybe I'm just interested in a company because I wanted to land a job there previously. That is not intent data. However, if someone uses a competing solution to yours and you have a way to displace that competitor to provide even more value, or you have another different approach to solving that, and so you're following a competitor displacement strategy in your cold outreach, that could be a real intent data. That does not mean that they're in market, but since it's a displacement strategy that you're following, if someone uses your competitor, that is could be a good reason to reach out. Now, that is not data that you're going to get on LinkedIn. You're going to have to go to different tools. We'll talk about that later in a second. Moving on, we have another surface level intent data, which is a company's hiring. Just because a company is hiring, yes, they're growing, but LinkedIn, if you go to LinkedIn account search, you won't be able to segment for who or what type of role that that company is hiring for. Yes, you can see that manually, but you have to go through accounts one by one, click into the account, go onto their profile, see what job postings they have, and then you'll see if you find anything relevant to your persona or who you can actually serve. Because if you're limited to one department or saying to one department, you won't care if another department is hiring. That doesn't mean anything for you. However, if someone is firing or hiring within a persona that you serve, that is something that you can use to build a point of view that you can then create message for in your cold outreach. And because that is something fresh, either they freshly let go of, let's say, sales reps, if you're targeting sales reps, or they're hiring, that must mean something, and you can come with an educated point of view. However, if you have other tools which already categorize what type of role these companies are hiring for, then that could be really intent. See, you're still doing that research manually on the LinkedIn side if that's what you're working on, but other intent tools can already do the heavy lifting for you and surface which are the companies who are actively growing or reducing their headcount in a given department that you care about. And the last category that we mentioned is news monitoring. Yes, news monitoring is good for prioritizing accounts. Maybe some information surfaces that shows you what's going on inside the account, and that can be used for personalization. Hey, I saw that you're expanding into new markets. By the time something hits the news, the initiative has already taken place. It's already done. If that's the point where you try to enter, remember they already have a working solution. That's why they made the news. Instead, if you go back in time to when they first decided on an initiative, which you're going to read about for larger companies, you're going to read about in their 10K annual reports, or then 10Q reports, which is the quarterly report that a public company would release to stakeholders. If that's where you do your research for what initiatives are going on inside a company and how your solution or product can be tied to a solution, now that is something that does signal intent. And that is also first party intent data coming straight from the source. That is your best source of information of whether or not any initiative that you bring to the table via cold outreach or warm outreach, that is it going to get prioritized or not? Are there any other, whoever is either in the chat or tuning in live on LinkedIn, what other signals have you been following recently or using and have had success with? If you can leave it in the chat, we'll get back to it and talk about it. In the meantime, what is the difference then between real intent data and surface level intent data? Real intent is behavior based. See, I've hired someone to do a job that we're not capable of doing now. They're gonna make some changes. People are actively looking for something, and we know that they're looking, and people just don't browse the internet or take action unless it's something important to them. So it must have something to do with getting their job done, so they keep their job or get a promotion. They are actively hiring. Again, that's an initiative. I want to grow revenue or reduce churn or reduce cost, and I need to hire to make that change happen. Everything here is related to a persona's job to be done, whereas this is something that has already happened, or too generic, or could be just out of interest. That is one difference. So takeaway from this segment is, if you're not using intent signals yet, that is something that you should get started with, because without that, you're just going through a list one by one and leaving it to chance whether the account is in market or not. Signals do help point you in the right direction, but if you are already using signals, it's a good time to revisit what signals you're actually using, and are they just surface level, which is good for busy work, but you're not going to get results, or are they real intent data indicating that someone needs to make a change in order to get their job done? That is what's true. What's a true signal telling you that there might be chance to land an opportunity with an account. Moving on. So it's cool that we have these signals, but where can we actually acquire these signals? Shout out to Yanni, because even though he could not make it, he's feeling under the weather. He has helped put together this based on what they are doing at Growth Today. And what you should know at Growth Today is they're running sending thousands of emails every single day across all their clients. And they're using a very intricate tech stack to know who deserves an email in the first place. Hopefully, we'll dive into this in more detail next week. But these are the top 5 categories that we put together. Number one, tool where you can get data from on, let's say, who uses a competitor is built with. Is it going to be 100% accurate? No. But essentially, if you are competing with other front-end tools, like something that gets embedded in a website, let's say, then that is going to be part of the source code of the website. And if you see a tracking tool, let's say, or a form or something else that people interact with within a website, if that's the type of category that you're competing in, Built With is a great tool to find who is using a competitor, and that you can, and then you can reach out with a point of view saying, hey, I've noticed you're using this competitor. Are you facing this challenge? Because we have a solution for that. That is a great way of personalizing cold outreach. Second thing is job description scraping. There are tools. I'm not sure which tool they're using because it hasn't been mentioned, but instead of just relying on LinkedIn's insights of which accounts are hiring, I think they use Clay to some extent to scrape the job description, or actually, I think it was specifically to uncover initiatives or what tools they're using. Imagine if you open someone's job description, what tends to be shown there? Blah 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 about the company and how amazing it is, what your role is, or what your tasks are. Those are pretty generic and are very similar across companies. But then, what else is in there? Desired skills or desired previous achievements, and what tech stack you will need to be able to use. So even if you're not competing with a front end tech stack, let's say you're using something that is a productivity tool and is not embedded in the company's website. If it's mentioned in the job description, that can also signal that or give you insights into how you can approach a company based on what tech stack they're already using. You can use enterprise intel, so HG Insights, 6sense, or the tool that 6sense and other tools use to gather their intent data, which is Bombora. These aren't the cheapest solutions, but you can get intel on what type of keywords certain users at companies are searching for. You can augment these with social listening tools, Trigify, and there are a bunch of others which, depending on where you want to listen for social cues, it's essentially people talking publicly about a pain, challenge, a solution, a competitor, and what they are saying, or what type of domain they're asking for a device on. These are great if you know what keywords to look out for. And I remember when I started at Bitrise, 7-8 years ago now, we already had social listening in place, which was a great way of finding new accounts who are having challenges with a competitor, and we can then reach out with a displacement strategy. Oftentimes, that is one playbook that you can use social listening for. And the last one is first-party intent data. Or often it could be the hardest one to get, or will be limited, but it is the most reliable of data. For instance, if you have an application or a platform where users have to take action or elicit a certain behavior, and if your product team or engineering team has event tracking in place, so to know what type of behavior a user is taking within the platform, you can use that first intent data from the application to make educated guesses on what someone is trying to achieve, and or you can see to what extent they have adopted the product, and you can go in for an expansion strategy by, again, tailoring your point of view based on what the user should be doing differently to get the most value out of the platform. Or you can use platform data like with Sales Navigator to see who is interested in a certain category. These are our top 5 type of intent tools, and some specific or notable mentions on where you can get these. If you are using other tools already to get intent data from, and you're open to sharing, just leave it either in the comments on LinkedIn or in the chat here on Riverside. Moving on, the difference then between the old way of reaching out and the new way of reaching out isn't simply monitoring signals. That is the tool that is the approach that changes. But there's one thing that's needed to know what type of signals to look out for. You can track a lot of signals, but what gives you the power to make the new way of reaching out or new way of building accounts list and doing outreach work? It comes down to how well you know your ICP and what intent data to look for. And I can't speak for the Growth Today team, but what I'll do is just show you specifically how I built my accounts list for 2026 at Revenue Ramp, and what type of level detail did I need to know my ICP and what intent data to look for. And it's going to be a fair, it looks simple on paper. It took me a couple of weeks to put it together because I did run into some limitations, but we can jump into those as well. Again, the process is exactly the same as I outlined above here. I started off with running an account search. However, I did not use LinkedIn Sales Navigator to build my initial list of accounts because of one thing. I tried that. That's what I started off with. But LinkedIn doesn't have, or LinkedIn's intent data is limited to what's happening inside the platform. And I wanted to go broader than that. So last year I had a subscription to a tool called Cognism, and they're great if you need unlimited data. And what I was able to search for there is basically I had a bit more nuanced search than what is available on LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Why is that in the first place? LinkedIn Sales Navigator, or LinkedIn again, doesn't make money by selling business licenses. They make the majority of their revenue from selling ads. So it is not in their interest to make their account search as robust or robust enough for you to be able to find the accounts that you're looking for. These are all the searches that you have access to. So let's say you're trying to find which accounts are government or B2G, which accounts are selling to consumers, or which accounts are privately owned, which accounts are public. LinkedIn won't have this data or won't give you access to it. And what I found is Cognism does give you the option to look for only private companies or public companies, or exclude government organizations. And that has been a huge for me to clean my account list based on firmographic information. Then I went one step further. Cognism also has information on what technologies a company is using, because in the backend they're probably also using tools like Built With or other insight tools. So that was a huge plus for me. I could filter for, I know exactly, or what, not exactly, but I know what type of tools my best customers tend to use and why. So I filter for those type of tools, the more modern sales tools, let's say, that are typically used by companies who I enjoy working with. So I had a large pool, and now I have a smaller pool of companies who I want to reach out to. And then the cool thing is Cognism also uses Bombora on the back end, and you can set, I think, 12 keywords that you can monitor out of the 2,000 or 3,000 keywords that Bombora tracks. You can filter your list further by keyword intent data, all within one platform. And this was huge. This actually gave me, until step 2, I got a list of, I think, 4,800 companies, which is a lot. Definitely not going to work with 4,800 companies. But once I added step 3, I was down to 92 accounts. 92 accounts in end of November who fit my geographic, all the firmographic information that I want. They use the technologies that I want, and they are interested in the categories that I serve. That's amazing. 92 companies only. I'm missing one thing though. One thing that LinkedIn Sales Navigator is great at, which is how many people are actually working at those companies, and within each department. That is LinkedIn's best source of insight. So what I had to do is export this list of companies from Cognism and then go back into LinkedIn. If you have LinkedIn Sales Navigator Advanced or Advanced Plus, you can upload accounts in CSV format, but you're limited to 1,000 accounts per list. So I had to take those 4,800 accounts and create 5 CSV files with under 1,000 accounts and then upload them to Sales Navigator. And then I could filter by department headcount size, because I only care about sales teams, or I have a better chance of selling to sales teams who have at least 5, but up to 20 sales reps, whether that's business development or account managers, account executives. And I can filter for that on LinkedIn. I can rely that is the most accurate data that I'm going to get from the internet. Now, I'm still not going to reach out because I need to then take I think I got in the end 300, 400 accounts by uploading the 4,800 something accounts from here. I have a separate category or a separate LinkedIn accounts list for these 92 companies, and I'm taking a separate strategy with them. Then I have the rest of my accounts, the now 1,400 accounts, and I want to save them as qualified lists. So I have 2 lists in the end for non-EMEA accounts and EMEA accounts, all because LinkedIn Sales Navigator helped me narrow down which are the companies who have 5 to 20 sales reps. And then before I reach out, I have one more step. I'm adding in the signals, or I'm monitoring some signals that indicate when is the right time to reach out and who I should be prioritizing. And these are some signals that I'm looking out for. First of all, I'm using LinkedIn Sales Navigator's category intent data. Are they interested in one of the tooling categories that I set? Because even though I'm not selling a sales tool, if someone's interested in a sales tool that or a new sales tool, that could indicate something's going on or something's not performing well inside the account and they need to make a change. And based on what they're looking at, that gives me an idea for how I should be tailoring my message when reaching out to a company. And yes, I can start low with individual contributors, extract information to tailor my point of view, and then reach out with a point of view to an executive who I will be wanting to speak to. I can also use, and I am using, LinkedIn saved lead searches. So let's say if has someone new joined an account that I want to target, I want to be notified of that instead of manually looking every single day for who are new contacts within an account. I have relationship triggers. Can someone who I'm close to introduce me to an account? And again, this isn't something that I want to run every single day. Instead, what I can do is go to my saved searches and have people who have connections within my book of business, and I can ask for a warm introduction. And again, LinkedIn will notify me of new results who I can reach out to or who I can contact who match the criteria that I saved already. So it's LinkedIn Sales Navigator telling me where I should be focusing instead of manually searching one by one when I'm prospecting. Profile views, yes, those are surface level, but are a good way of social warming or running social warming campaigns. I can even look for comments both on which people specifically from my book of business are engaging with my posts or the posts of my competitors. That's an engagement that, although surface level, I will still want to look out for. And if you can, this is limited in my experience, if you can see which accounts that you're targeting are visiting your website, or even which people are visiting your website, you can use, let's say, lead magnets or other forms to get that information. If they're visiting your website, again, that is higher intent than just a profile view. These are specifically what I'm looking for, and I'm using these data plus my knowledge around the persona, their job to be done in pain, to first segment how I'm going to reach out to them and what message I'm going to reach out with to land a reply. That is what changed in 2026. This is the big picture on what the old way has looked like and what has changed in the last 2-3 years, and what has to change if you still want to get replies in 2026. And that is a wrap. Whoever joined the chat, engaged, thank you for being here. And if you haven't yet, see you next week, or you can register for next week's session where we break down exactly what approaches we're doing on the outbound part. Now that we have our list of accounts, how are we going to write our messages in order to get replies or maximize our effort to build pipeline in Q1 instead of facing a pipeline gap in Q2 that we then have to fill. See you guys next week.